Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinath, Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtadhara Satashishi Manis Divine Grace Abhay Charnaravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shishi Radha Gopinath Bhagavan Ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Bo Namo Vishnu Oh, you need to get the... Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, Chapter number 7, Further Inquiries by Vidura, Text number 37. Tatvanam bhagavam stesham, katitha pati sankramaha, Tatre mam ka upasiran, ka usvid anuserate, tatvanam bhagavam stesham, katitha pati sankramaha, tatre mam ka upasiran, ka usvid anuserate, Tatvaram Bhagavam Stesham Tatvaram Bhagavam Stesham Katitapati Sankramaha Katidapati Sankramaha Tatremam Ka Upasiran Tatremam Ka Upasiran Ka Usvid Anuserate Ka Usvid Anuserate Tatvanam Bhagavam Stesham Tatvanam Bhagavam Stesham Katitapati Sankramaha Katidapati Sankramaha Tatremam Ka Upasiran Tatremam Ka Upasiran Ka Usvid Anuserate Ka Usvid Anuserate. Word for word, Tatvanam Tatvanam of the elements of nature. Bhagavan, O great sage, Tesham, of them, Katita, how many, Patisankrama, disillusions, Tatra, thereupon, Imam, unto the Supreme Lord, Ke, who are they, Upasiran, being saved, Ke, who are they? Who? Swit. May. Anusirate. Serve the Lord while He sleeps. Yes. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Please describe how many dissolutions there are for the elements of material nature, and who survives after the dissolutions to serve the Lord while He sleeps. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, texts 47 and 48, it is said that all the material manifestations with innumerable universes appear and disappear with the breathing of Mahavishnu lying in Yoga Nidra or mystic sleep. Yakaranadava jale bachitisma yoga nidram ananta jagar anda saroma kupa adhara shakti avalambya param swamurtim govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami yasyaika nisvasita kalamatavalamya jivanti loma vilaja jaganandanataha vishnur mahatsa iha yasya kala vishesho govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Govinda, the ultimate and supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, lies sleeping unlimited on the causal ocean in order to create unlimited numbers of universes during that sleep. He lies on the water by His own internal potency, and I worship that original supreme Godhead. Excuse me. Due to His breathing, innumerable universes come into existence, and when He withdraws His breath, there occurs the dissolution of all the lords of the universes. That plenary portion of the Supreme Lord is called Mahavishnu, and He is part and parcel of Lord Krishna. I worship Govinda, the original Lord. After the dissolution of the material manifestations, the Lord and His kingdom beyond the causal ocean do not disappear, nor do the inhabitants, the Lord's associates. The associates of the Lord are far more numerous than the living entities who have forgotten the Lord due to material association. The impersonalist explanation of the word aham in the 4 verses of the original Bhagavatam, aham eva sam eva gre, etc., is refuted here. The Lord and His eternal associates remain after the dissolution. Vidura's inquiry about such persons is a clear indication of the existence of all the paraphernalia of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Kashikanda, as quoted by both Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who follow the footsteps of Srila Sridhar Swami. Nachavyante hi yad bhakta mahatmyam pralayapadi atochyuto kile loke sa ekha sarvago vyayaha. The devotees of the Lord never annihilate their individual existences, even after the dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. The Lord and the devotees who associate with Him are always eternal, in both the material and spiritual worlds. Translation again for text 37 of Canto 3, Chapter 7. Please describe how many dissolutions there are for the elements of material nature, and who survives after the dissolutions to serve the Lord while he is asleep. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we're continuing our further inquiries by Vidura. Yesterday we heard from Bhavi Bhushan Prabhu on the text 36 on the mood and attitude of Vidura speaking to Maitreya Rishi. In fact, it's quite interesting that you'd think after this verse 36, O best among the Brahmanas, those who are spiritual masters are very kind to the needy. They are always kind to their followers, disciples and sons, and without being asked by them, the spiritual master describes all that is knowledge. So here you can see, Prabhupada says in the purport, Vidura appealed to Maitreya Muni to speak on subjects about which he might not have asked. So it's quite interesting that you think Vidura has finished speaking here, but actually Vidura continues speaking and asking questions out of eagerness. So naturally, Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, when you see someone in the class, they ask a question. Like I remember when I used to go to university, the classes that I used to have, especially in the engineering field, used to be very late at night because it would cater for those who work during the day, and they would come 6 to 9, so a 3-hour lecture session at night. And I still remember that around at 8 o'clock at night, the lecture, beginning of the semester, it would start and finish on time, and slowly it would start a bit late, finish a bit early, and then gradually it would end up in such a way that the 3-hour session became an hour and a half, and then there was time for questions, otherwise everyone left for home. So yeah, Prabhu was mentioning, it reminded me how Prabhu was mentioning that if someone immediately in class asks a couple of questions and the teacher answers the questions, and then after some time the student says, oh, thank you very much, you've clarified it, but I've got a few more questions, and they roll out a nice A4 piece of paper full of questions, 20 questions, 30 questions. Everyone in the class would be like, oh man, please, let us go. So it reminded me of that. Our mood and mentality of education nowadays is more to just get it done, over and done with, get the piece of paper so that we can go get the money. Welcome to the economic development of Kali Yuga. So that is diametrically opposite to what the mood and mentality of a devotee is. Because the mood and mentality of a devotee is that they are very eager to hear about Krishna, and having that Trishna for Krishna, that thirst for Krishna, they welcome any topic, any subject matter to be discussed in the assembly of such great devotees as well. Now, on the other hand, you see, Maitreya Rishi would be extremely pleased with Vidura's questioning and his mode of questioning or mood of questioning. So it's a reciprocal thing here, that Vidura hears from Maitreya, questions Maitreya, hears from Maitreya, repeats what he's heard in a way that encourages Maitreya to continue speaking. So we heard how he asked Maitreya about the sarga, or the initial creation, and then he gives a couple of verses saying that this is what happens. Yes, that's what happens. But then he asks questions about the jiva, about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and their connection with the material world. And after explaining that, more questions or further inquiries are given by Vidura. So today's verse talks a lot about the dissolution of the material elements. So here, also known as pralaya. So here, Vidura asks, please describe how many dissolutions there are for the elements of material nature, and who survives after the dissolutions to serve the Lord while he sleeps, while he is asleep. So the first thing here Prabhupada clarifies is that Mahavishnu is lying in yoga nidra, or mystic sleep. His nidra is not like ours. It is not that Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole, Koti Jao, was it? Pisachara Kole. Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole. I can't even remember, I'm missing a word. But it's mentioned Mahaprabhu is calling out to the devotee, wake up, sleeping soul. And why is he crying out, wake up, sleeping soul? He's telling the souls, Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole, Koti Jao, Pisachara Kole. That Maya, you are sleeping on the lap of the witch Maya, and you should immediately get up. And he says that here is the medicine, here is the mantra. You chant Hare Krishna, and you will come to your original consciousness. So here, Prabhupada's mentioning here, yoga nidra, or mystic sleep. Now let us see or analyze this Mahavishnu's sleep or yoga nidra. Govinda, this ultimate Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, lies sleeping unlimitedly. He sleeps unlimitedly. Okay? We get tired after sleeping for a couple more extra hours. But he's sleeping unlimitedly on the causal ocean in order to create unlimited numbers of universe. While he's sleeping, he's still doing something. Well, he is the cause of all causes, but at the same time he has everything to do and nothing to do at the same time. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. He has nothing to do. But although it's done, parasya shaktir vividhaya shuyate, swabhavaki jnana balakriya cha. So it's done by his energies. So one way he is doing it, through his energies. But at the same time he's not doing it. He's resting. So here, in order to create unlimited number of universes during that sleep, he lies in the water by his own internal potency. I worship the original Supreme Godhead. So this is Mahavishnu. That Karanarnava Jale, in the Karanarnava, or the Karana ocean, he's sitting there or lying there, and from him comes unlimited universes just by his breathing. Now, by his breathing, unlimited universes come into existence, and then when he inhales, then all the universes then come back into his body, and they enter into their dormant state again. Now, just to recap, from Mahavishnu comes the unlimited ocean, unlimited universes, and he enters into each one of them as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. And then as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, he further expands as Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, the Paramatma, the all-pervasive aspect of the Supreme Lord. Now, the reason why I'm explaining this again, or repeating this again, is that there is another type of dissolution. One is the wrap up, or the complete dissolution or the end of the whole cosmic creation, going into Mahavishnu and going into its state of deep slumber again. And then there's another state wherein Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, it's mentioned at the end of Lord Brahma's day that there is a dissolution, a partial dissolution. At the end of Lord Brahma's lifespan, there's another dissolution. And then at the end, when Mahavishnu decides to breathe in, there's a dissolution at that time. Now, here Vidura is asking specifically, how many dissolutions are there for the elements of material nature? So this will be discussed further by Chaya Rishi. Now, Prabhupada talks about a very interesting point about the Aham Eva Sam Eva Agre verse, the first of the Chatur Shloki of Srimad Bhagavatam. There it's mentioned that before the creation of the material world, he alone existed, Krishna. Aham Eva Sam Eva Agre. And after the dissolution of this material universe, he'll continue to exist. Now, the Mayavadis, they explain and twist this verse to fit their understanding that the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes under the control of material existence. But here Prabhupada says that actually, after the dissolution of material manifestations, the Lord and His kingdom beyond the causal ocean do not disappear, nor do the inhabitants, the Lord's associates. Now, when Lord Brahma's day is over, what happens is that the whole universe is inundated all the way up until the 4 top planetary systems, Mahar, Janas, Tapas and Satya. So those 4 planetary systems, they remain. Everything else is inundated. But at the end of Lord Brahma's day, everything becomes inundated. So now, despite such inundation, it's mentioned here that the Lord and His kingdom beyond the causal ocean do not disappear. So even if material universe wraps up and goes into a dormant state, still the spiritual world exists along with its inhabitants. It's mentioned as the Ekapad Vibhuti and the Tripad Vibhuti. That the whole creation, material, spiritual, is somewhat split up into a quarter and 3 quarters. 3 quarters being the spiritual existence and 1 quarter being the material cosmic manifestation. And it's mentioned that we are severely outnumbered in our trying to enjoy. That the Lord and His associates are enjoying to the topmost pleasure the 3/4 existence of the spiritual world, where we are here suffering in the 1/4, the Ekapad. So, I remember when we were doing book distribution, sometimes when you approach someone, you feel some fear in the heart, fear of rejection, fear of what the other person will say, fear of what will happen, whether the transaction will happen or not. And I remember one of the biggest things that gives you solace when you do book distribution is when you have a partner. Because when you're doing books, anything that may happen, you can rely on your partner. Just by looking at the other Sankirtan devotee, you can feel great satisfaction and enthusiasm to continue going in your service. What to speak of sitting down and taking prasad and speaking to them. So sometimes on the street, if you're doing books and your partner's over there, I think it was Vijay Prabhu, he's explaining that actually it's not just you and the other person. You have to also include the Paramatma. And the equation is that it's 3 against 1. Because it's you wanting to give Krishna to the other, it's the Paramatma in the heart working together with you wanting to give Krishna to the other person, and the Jiva in the other body is with the Super Soul, and that Super Soul in their body is also wanting to give them Krishna. So that Jiva is the only one that's out, odd one out. So it's 3 against 1. So when you distribute the book, you can always remember that. When the book goes into the hand or is about to go in the hand, actually it's 3 against 1. There's nothing to fear. When we preach Krishna consciousness, when we want to give Krishna to others, when we're giving, when we're speaking about Krishna Katha or trying to encourage other devotees to practice Krishna consciousness, sometimes what we say will be unpalatable. Sometimes what we say may not be conducive or it will definitely not be conducive to their sense gratification. So then you need to understand that we represent Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and we should say it, of course, in a pleasing, truthful manner, but we should say it so that we don't compromise the principles of Krishna consciousness. And when we present Krishna consciousness in such a way, we shouldn't fear any so-called mundane social repercussions from it. Prabhupada mentions in one conversation that Tamal Krishna Maharaj was talking to about how people are scared of public opinion or public relations with ISKCON. And Prabhupada, he says, so if they say dance naked on the street, will you dance naked? So we are not here simply to please them. We're here to please the spiritual master. So we can remember that. And more importantly, as we read at the end of Chaitanya Charitamrita in Prabhupada's final comments, that not only the super soul is within the heart, the super soul is always there with the associates. Just like the king is never alone, the king is also with his associates. Similarly, Krishna is in the heart with his associates. He's there with Srimati Radharani, he's there with all the gopis and the gopas, he's there with all his devotees along with the Guru Parampara, as well as our spiritual master. So he's there in the heart. So in one sense, it's not just 3 against 1, it's a lot more against 1. And if you think about it even more, that if someone comes and tries to challenge this Krishna consciousness movement, you can understand that you have the backing of 3/4 of whole of creation behind you. So you don't have to fear this one insignificant tiny jiva trying to rebel against Krishna consciousness movement. You have so many liberated living entities standing behind you, ready to support you in your preaching, supporting you in your Krishna consciousness. You may not see it physically, but they are there. Like we see the example how Prabhupada one day, one of his disciples set up a class, I think it was in Canada, set up a hall, set up a class, distributed flyers, tried to invite everyone to come. Prabhupada came, sat down, and no one was there. No one was there for giving class. 2. And Prabhupada just sat down and he gave a class to all 4 walls. And then Prabhupada got up and he left, and his disciple begged Srila Prabhupada for forgiveness. Sorry Prabhupada, we tried our best. There was no one there. And Prabhupada said, what do you mean no one was there? Narad Muni was there. Lord Brahma was there. In another place, Prabhupada says there was a kirtan going on, and then Prabhupada said that he started laughing in the middle of the kirtan. All of a sudden started laughing. And Prabhupada's laughter wasn't a soft chuckle. Prabhupada laughed and laughed and laughed from the deep. When you laugh really nicely and laugh loudly from the stomach, Prabhupada was laughing nicely. And all the disciples were thinking, why is Prabhupada laughing? Did we do something wrong with the kirtan, or is there some devotee doing something funny? What's happening here? And later devotees finished the kirtan and asked Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said that, he was laughing because he saw Narad Muni laughing. And why was Narad Muni laughing? Narad Muni was laughing because he was seeing all of these Western people chanting and dancing Hare Krishna. All these mlechas and yavanas chanting and dancing Hare Krishna without abandon. They were just chanting the Lord's holy name. So Prabhupada was laughing about that. So that's the point. The point is that the previous acharyas are there. The devotees are there to support us in our Krishna consciousness movement. So always remember, it's 3/4 against the 1/4 material existence. But still, despite such overwhelming odds, just see how hell-bent we are in trying to enjoy our senses. And just see how kind Krishna is in satisfying that ridiculous desire. Okay, so that's going back. We're talking about how, despite dissolution, the spiritual kingdom and the associates still remain. That reminds me of Markandeya Rishi's story in the 11th canto, 12th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. How Markandeya Rishi was blessed by Lord Shiva during his tapasya, to the extent that he even got the mercy of the Lord. And when the Lord asked him for some benedictions, Markandeya Rishi said he didn't want any. But then the Lord asked him again, and Markandeya Rishi thought, I wonder what it's like. I wonder what dissolution is like. I wonder what pralaya is like. When the whole universe goes under inundation, I wonder what it's like. And it's mentioned the Supreme Personality of Godhead smiled very wryly. And it's mentioned there that the Lord smiled in such a way because He is never supportive of the living entities trying to flirt with His external energy. He is never for that, because He knows how powerful external energy is, and how what is the word? How easily the living entity will be able to come out of material existence. So, I can't remember the word. Not bewildering, how weak. I guess that's the word. So, Markandeya Rishi asks for this benediction, and Krishna Tatashtu satisfies this desire. And when Pralaya did happen, it's mentioned that Markandeya Rishi, he got scared. A great Rishi who's gone beyond birth and death, a great Rishi who has conquered the body, conquered material desires. If you've conquered material desires, you come to a very, very fearless state of existence. Because the biggest thing, or the very most dear thing to ourselves, is the body. And when the body comes under danger, then we become fearful. But it's not like that for Markandeya Rishi. But when he went through Pralaya, Maya was so powerful that he became fearful. That being tossed and turned by so many different waves, that he could not see the end of the ocean. It was so vast. And at the same time, there were so many living entities waiting to eat him within that ocean. And he went through that trauma so many times. But it's mentioned that every single time he went through that process of Pralaya, experiencing that Pralaya, then it's mentioned that at one particular point in time he washed up against the shore. And on the shore he saw a tree coming from that island. And on that tree there was baby Krishna lying on that leaf. Right? In the Navadipta Mahatmya, it's mentioned that he somehow gets washed up onto an island. I believe it's Godrumadrip. So you could see that even during dissolution, these particular places of the Lord's abode remains. It is not that Vrindavan, Bhoma Vrindavan disappears. It is not that Svetadvip, Dhruvaloka disappears. It is not that all the other tirthas or holy places of the Lord disappear when inundation happens, or when the whole pralaya or dissolution happens. They remain. If that's the case within the material world, what to speak of outside of the material world? That's the point. If within the material world, Satsweta Dvipa, Vrindavan, Dwarka, Rameshwaram, all of these places, Puri, Jagannath Puri, if all these places still remain despite the whole universe going under cosmic annihilation, what to speak of the whole cosmic manifestation going into a dormant state, being sucked up within Mahavishnu? Still the spiritual worlds will exist because they're eternal, whereas the material world is real but temporary. Its existence goes through the constant phases of manifestation and unmanifestation. So, therefore, Prabhupada says that this impersonalist explanation that the Lord didn't exist, or rather if the Lord did exist, that he comes under the control of material existence, that has no standing. In fact, their understanding that before the whole cosmic manifestation there was no individuality, there was no supreme person, there's no abode, that's all destroyed here because those such things exist. Now, this sentence here, Vidura's inquiry about such persons, he's talking about the Lord and his associates, is a clear indication of the existence of all paraphernalia of the Lord. And here Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, who follow the footsteps of Srila Sridhar Goswami. And they quote a verse from the Kashi Kanda. The devotees of the Lord never annihilate their individual existences, even after the dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. The Lord and the devotees who associate with Him are always eternal, both in the material and spiritual worlds. So, we see an example of this in Srimad Bhagavatam, of how Jay and Vijay fall down. And it's mentioned specifically in Krishna Lila that when Shishupal, when he was killed in the Rajasuya Yagya, it's mentioned that when he was killed by Lord Krishna by throwing his Sudarshan disc, that the soul exited from Shishupal's body and entered into the effulgence of the Lord. And everyone there saw it and was astonished. Similarly, in Braja, when Aghasur was killed by Krishna, that soul came out of the top of the head of Aghasur's body and it floated there for some time. It waited for Krishna to come out of the body because Krishna wanted to show or begin the whole Brahma Vimohana Lila. Because as soon as Krishna came out, the soul merged into his effulgence. It's mentioned it merged into his effulgence. It emerged, specifically in Shishupal's case, it says it merged into the effulgence of the Lord, the Brahma Jyoti. Now, Rupa Goswami mentions that, yes, in this case, it was Jay and Vijay who had fallen down, and they were being cursed by the four Kumaras. And they used the Brahma Jyoti as a gateway to enter into the spiritual world. It is not that they merged into the Brahma Jyoti and stayed there. It was a gateway for them to enter into the spiritual world. So in that sense, the word merged is used. Because they let go of their material body, let go of the material existence, and enter into the spiritual world to engage and serve and worship the Lord. In another place, it's mentioned by other acharyas that whenever the Lord does appear to kill Shishupala and Dantavakra, it's not that Jay and Vijay always fall down. In some other cycles, then it's other living entities, other demoniac living entities that appear. And those living entities, they merge into the Brahma Jyoti, just like any other demon. So this is the explanation given by the previous acharyas. But here's the point. The devotees, they never annihilate their individual existences. And the non-devotees also, they don't annihilate their individual existences. They merge into the Brahma Jyoti and then again fall back down. Aruya Krishnena Parampadam Tata Patantyanadito Yusman Angraya. Because they have not worshipped Krishna's lotus feet, they again fall down into material existence, again to carry out materialistic activities, to again once again come to the point of realization of Krishna. Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Now, that's what we talk, that's a bit about the dissolutions. That's how, at least as an overview, is explained here. Now, in relation to the verse, or in relation to the topic of how the existence of the Lord and all paraphernalia of the Lord, another example comes to mind when Krishna and Arjuna, remember the sons of the Brahmana that were killed? How Mahavishnu had taken those sons, and Arjuna had pledged that if I don't stop the sun from disappearing, I'll walk into fire. In that particular pastime, when Krishna took Arjuna to Mahavishnu's planet, so when he went to the abode of Mahavishnu, there he saw Mahavishnu reclining on his bedstead, but he was surrounded by all of his associates. And each of the associates were persons, but they are given as Shakti. So each of the Shaktis were personified. They are present before the Lord, worshipping Him. The Bu, the Nila, the different paraphernalia of the Lord, just like the chakra, the mace, they were all standing there, Garuda, worshipping the Lord. So here is an example of how the existence of the paraphernalia of the Lord is also there. In fact, most of the paraphernalia of the Lord is taken up by Lord Balaram. The bedstead, the helmet, the earrings, the jewelry, the clothes. Lord Balaram monopolizes in that service. That's his eagerness to serve and worship his Lord Krishna. So there is an example of the paraphernalia of the Lord existing along with the Lord in his abode. Another example given is that how is it that the living entities can exist with the Lord? Even within the material world, when you read the pastimes of how Krishna went from Dwarka to visit Mithila, where he was going to meet Shutadev and Bahulasva. So there, in that pastime, it's mentioned that the Lord, He took the great sages and some of His confidential associates with Him. And as He was going on the road, He appeared like the moon surrounded by many, many stars and other luminaries. And so everyone got to take darshan of the Lord as He traveled through the different provinces on His way to Mithila. When He entered into the city, then He split into two. One went to the king and one went to this Brahmana, Shutadev. And it's mentioned that not only did Krishna split, all these associates also split. So one batch went to see the king, and the other batch went to see the Brahmana. In another place, when after Krishna had defeated Bhaumasura and taken the 16,100 queens back to Dwarka, he had a marriage ceremony for each and every one of them, and at the same time, and all of the Lord's associates and family members were present at each wedding ceremony at the same time. So the Lord always exists with these paraphernalia. So therefore, when Prabhupada says that the Lord exists in the heart, along with the Guru Parampara and all of his associates, you can see that supported and satisfied by these all examples in 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, I just wanted to just quickly wanted to share something small. Now, of the associates of Lord Krishna, we can understand that the topmost associate of Lord Krishna is Srimati Radharani. And because Radhashtami is coming, I just thought I'd end this class on a very interesting thing I read in Srimad Bhagavatam. When Draupadi met the other queens of Krishna in Kurukshetra, she asked each of the queens how they married Krishna, or how Krishna came and took their hand. So each one of them explained their situation, like Rukmini saying that she had her Swayamvar ceremony, and how Krishna came and stole her during the Swayamvar ceremony, and so on and so forth. So each of these queens explained their situation. At the end of it all, it's mentioned that the 16,100 queens, represented by Rohini, they explained to Krishna, Draupadi, they explained to her that they were actually abducted by Bhaumasura, who had defeated their fathers, the kings. And being abducted, Krishna came, saved them, and married them. And they mentioned that, very interestingly, if you look at that section, that each of the 8 principal queens, they'll explain this story, and at the end they'll finish, we wish to remain the maidservant of Krishna, or he has taken us to be his maidservant. None of them mention that we have become the great queens of Krishna. They always mention we have become his servant. So each one of them mentioned that. And when you come to the end, when Rohini Devi is speaking, Rohini Devi being the principal queen who is representing the 16,100 princesses stolen by Bhaumasura previously, she mentions there, explains the situation, and then suddenly starts asking or starts praying for the mercy of the dust of the residents of Braja, which is quite bewildering, because you'd expect them to finish, we also are maidservants of Krishna, and then move on, next chapter. But actually they mentioned that they want to become the servants of the residents of Vrindavan. Specifically, they want to become, also they mentioned that they want to get the dust from all of the residents, including the Aboriginal women of Vrindavan. They want to take the dust on their heads. And there in the purport it's mentioned that there's no fault in the previous 8 chief queens of Dwarka, not mentioning anything about the residents of Braja, because their mood of service to Krishna is on that Aishwarya platform, and they are completely satisfied with it. Now, the 16,100 queens, the others, they're mentioned as lesser queens in the sense that in comparison to the first 8 chief queens, but they're no less being the queens of Krishna. But these queens, they somehow or other, they were able to hear about the pastimes of Krishna in Braja from Narad Muni and Uddhava in the palace. Hearing of that, then they understood the glories and the qualities of Krishna in Vrindavan. So they desired the association of Krishna as Brajendranandan Krishna, not as Vasudev Krishna or Krishna in Dwarkanath. In that section, what's mentioned there is that these queens and the gopis, the 8 chief queens of the gopis, they have a loving quarrel between them. That one worships Krishna in Dwarka, one wants to worship Krishna in Braja. Now, the queens that Krishna had saved from Bhavasura, they later on, after the Mausalya Lila, when Krishna wraps up the whole Yadu dynasty and takes them back to Godhead in a very dramatic way, there it's mentioned that Krishna was leading the queens back to Hastinapur. But at that point in time, he was overwhelmed by a couple of cowherd boys who stole all the queens away from Arjuna. Those cowherd boys who were none other than Krishna, who stole them and took them to Gokul. When he took them to Gokul, that's where they then met Uddhava. And that's when they were able to worship the Lord in the mood of Braja Bhakti, in the unalloyed devotional service of the Lord, that platform of the topmost platform of Braja. So there it's mentioned, a very interesting verse glorifying Srimati Radharani in the purport. And it's mentioned, Devi Krishna Mayi Prokta Radhika Paradevata Sarva Lakshmi Mayi Sarva Kanti Sammohini Para. The transcendental goddess Srimati Radharani is the direct counterpart of Lord Krishna. She is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval, eternal potency of the Lord. Actually, if you want to go into the details, the queens of Vrindavan are simply reflections of the gopis of Braja. The gopis of Braja, as mentioned in this particular purport, this is 10th canto, chapter 83, text 41 and 42. In that purport it's mentioned that the queens prototype, the original, the prototypes of the original forms of the queens are the gopis in Vrindavan. They expand themselves so that they could serve the Lord in that mood in Dwarka. So we hear how in Chaitanya Charitamrita you'll hear details about Satyabhama, about Rukmini, and who their counterpart is in Vrindavan, and how they're there to serve the Lord in that mood, in that rasa. But anyway, I just wanted to focus on this. We were talking about the paraphernalia of the Lord and the associates of the Lord. We were talking about the Tripad Bhuti and the Ekapad Vibhuti. But you need to understand that of the Tripad Vibhuti and Ekapad Vibhuti, the Lord exists regardless of the manifestation of the unmanifestation of material existence. And He always exists with the inhabitants of that spiritual world, His associates. And of the associates, the topmost associate is Srimati Radharani, the transcendental goddess, who is the direct counterpart of Lord Krishna. And she is the central figure for all the goddesses of fortune. We were hearing that last night in Chaitanya Charitamrita class. How from Srimati Radharani all the other goddesses of fortune emanate. And she possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. She is the primeval, eternal potency of the Lord. Okay, so I'll end here. Any questions, comments, corrections? Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.